Hi guys, I'm Sam from the Unity of Life and welcome back to my channel. In the last video you will have known that we looked at Lucy's Law and that we talked a little bit about breeding. And we said that it came sort of under the Animal Welfare Act of 2006 and it was there to try and make sure that people bought puppies from responsible breeders and kittens. So now we're going to be talking about the Breeding Act of Dogs of 1973. So this really needs to be updated because it is out of date. It's about 48 years out of date, so it really needs to be updated. So let's get into it and talk about it, shall we? So this particular act is to regulate the commercial breeding of dogs, to provide for inspection of premises at which the dogs are bred, and for control over transportation of puppies, and for the purposes connected with those matters. No person shall keep a breeding establishment for dogs except under the authority of a licence granted accordance with the provisions for this act. And like I said, that are loopholes in this licensing, and it needs to be tightened up. So this act is governed by the issue of a licence from a local authority, so that's like your council. Following, depending upon circumstances, a new breeder never holding a licence will be subjected to an inspection of the premises. And I do believe that it doesn't matter if you're a new breeder, if you've been doing it for quite some time, that it does not hurt to have an inspection of your premises at least once a year. The Act lays down clearly that the conditions for, and I'm not swearing here, but for a bitch giving birth to litters must be over 1 year old, no more than 6 litters in her lifetime, and no more than 1 litter within 1 year. Okay, and I think 6 litters from one female in her lifetime when she's over 1, that's a bit much, considering you can only have 1 litter within a year. So you're talking when she's 7, and I think when they're about 7, it's a bit old. I think you're talking from 2 years old up to about 5 years old is probably a reasonable age for to be breeding your dog. After that or before that is either way too soon or way too late in their lifetime. Also, like I said, it depends on the breed, because Great Danes typically only live for 8 years, so you really wouldn't want to wait until they're like 6. You'd only have a shorter period of time in which to breed from them. So the 5 needs need to be covered. So these are covered in this video. I'm not going to go into this law. I'm not going to go through those 5 needs now, because if you see my Animal Welfare Act video, then you should know what those 5 needs are. If you haven't seen it, I suggest you go and check that out, because it is really important for you to understand the different laws. So if a person is convicted under this particular act, they may either have to surrender their licence for the breeding dogs, or will not be allowed to breed dogs or own them. Which I think, if you're convicted under that act, you should have your licence taken off of you. You should be banned from owning dogs. So therefore, if you've only got any dogs in your possession, then they should be taken from you. So this law was actually updated in 2018. However, I still don't think it's good enough, at all. So in 2018, the litter threshold on which a dog breeding licence is required was reduced. Anyone breeding 3 or more litters, so hopefully that's from more than 1 female, and selling at least 1 puppy in a 12-month period will require a dog breeding licence. Right. But as it says there, that is only if you are breeding 3 or more litters and selling at least one of those puppies in that year. If you only breed one litter, then you can get away with not having a license, especially if you don't sell them. But a lot of people do sell them and try to make some sort of profit, so you have to have a license. A breeder can breed as many puppies as they like without a license if the person carrying on the activity, so the breeding, provides documentary evidence that none of them have been sold, whether these are puppies or adult dogs. And I personally think if you are going to be breeding any dog, you should have a license, regardless if you're going to be selling these dogs or not. And I also think in order to be able to get this license, you should be made to go on a course and to do some education to be able to know what you're doing, because it's not so simple as we think, like putting a male and a female together and hoping for the best. And I am going to be doing a video on breeding that I learned from college, okay? So that's why I think people should do a course on how to breed their animal. For those breeding 1 or 2 litters in a 12-month period and selling the puppies, a license may be required if you are deemed to be breeding dogs and advertising a business of selling dogs. The government has provided guidance on local authority inspections should consider when assessing whether a breeder meets the business test. So all that's on their website for more information. There are certain factors that would trigger the need of a breeding license, such as high volumes of animals sold or advertised for sale could indicate a business. And low volumes of animals sold or advertised could indicate a business where high sale prices or large profit margins are involved. And like I said, I just think we should scrap being able to sell puppies and kittens, and you should have a license to breed any animal and should have to go on a course every so often to refresh on how to breed an animal correctly, because these things do change. Conversely, breeders who breed a small number of puppies, e.g. fewer than 3 litters per year, and sell them without making a profit, are deemed to be out the scope of the licensing. So if you're selling the puppies to get back the money that you've had to pay the vet for their microchips and their vaccinations, therefore you're not making a profit, you're just gaining that money back because it is expensive, and therefore you don't need a license according to the law, which I think is absolute bullcrap, and that you should have a license regardless. It is important to note that a similar business test has been in place since 1999. So, hang on. If you watch it in 2021, then that is 22 years. And if you're watching in 2022, then that will be 23 years. That should really not have taken me all that long to figure that one out, because of when I was born in 98. So that should have been easy maths. Anyway, those breeding under the previous 5 litters threshold, right, so that's the inspection. So when the regulations are passed in 2018, so when they were passed in 2018, the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, so DEFRA, informed the Kennel Club that with an existing business test, it is not their intention to be catching out hobby breeders. Which hobby breeders should not even be a thing, okay? You shouldn't just breed because it's a hobby. Like I said, you should be able to. You should have a license regardless if you're only selling a one-off litter. You should have a license to be able to do that, to breed any dog. And if your dog is found to have been pregnant because of your carelessness, even if you haven't planned to get your dog pregnant or your cat or whatever animal, then you should be fined. It's as simple as that. because I know a lot of people don't have precautions when it comes to animals. It's ridiculous, and I'll tell you a little story about pure breeding to do with, do you know what, sorry, I'm sick of protecting these people. My aunt and uncle, okay, they don't know anything about animals yet. They have a horse. At least they had a horse, and then she died and they decided to get another horse, and they really haven't got a lot of money for it. But let's talk about their 2 dogs, shall we? They got their 2 dogs from a friend. Okay, from an accidental litter. She wasn't planning on breeding them, but because of her carelessness, her dog had gotten pregnant. So she had the mum was a Chihuahua, the dad is meant to be a Shih Tzu crossed with a Poodle. This is not the first litter that these 2 have had. They kept a dog from that previous litter for him to drop down dead for no apparent causes when he was 2 years old. And the reason for that is because the mum they found was inbred, because when they bought the mum, they brought a sister to the mum and she also dropped down dead, and they asked the vet if that was because of inbreeding. The vet said it was quite possible, and what did they go and do? They went and bought another dog from the same breeder, from the same litter, so she has some company. If the dog is inbred, you do not go and buy another dog from them, especially if it's caused the death of them. So my aunt has then got 3 puppies, because she thought that was brilliant, from an unlicensed breeder that didn't know what the hell she was doing. It wasn't even a planned pregnancy, and the dog that she bred was inbred in the first place. So there's going to be so many health issues, but I may as well be talking to a brick wall when it comes to them, because even though they turn around and say to everybody that they want to know something about animals, they should come to me. They need to learn to take their own damn advice. But that's got enough about them, because they do make my blood boil when it comes to animals. So let's get back to it. So licensings, you may not be aware, have to have star ratings. So let's get into what that means, shall we? The regulations also include a star rating system, like hotels. You know, like your 3 or 4 stars and your 5-star hotels. It's like that. Which was designed to both reward high-performing breeding establishments and to give further help to the puppy buying public to identify good breeders. Okay, and I have not got a problem with this. So licensed breeders will receive a star rating from 1 to 5 stars. Okay, so you really want somebody with 3+ stars for breeding. Those with a 5-star rating will receive a 3-year license, pay a lower fee, and will be expected less frequently. I don't think it should be the case. I think you should be inspected at least every year, regardless of your star ratings. Though, at the other end of the spectrum, will only receive a 1-star license, will pay a high license fee, and will be inspected with greater frequency. The star rating that it is rewarded will be based on 2 factors: the welfare standards against which the breeder is operating, and the risk rating, which is based on whether the breeder has a history of meeting these standards. Breeders operating to higher welfare standards and who have a history of maintaining these standards should receive a higher star rating, whilst those who are operating to the minimum standards and have no compliance history should be rewarded a 2-star rating. A 1-star rating will be rewarded to breeders who have minor failings. And I think it needs to toughen up a bit, and you shouldn't have any failings whatsoever. You're going to get any star rating for any licensing. You shouldn't get your license whatsoever if there's any failings, in my opinion. Right, so welfare stands. The government guidance document sets out the minimum standards that all licensed breeders are required to meet. These are based on current model licensing conditions for dog breeders that have been in use for a number of years. These conditions include housing, exercise, feeding, health, socialisation, and provision of emergencies. There are also a number of higher standards that will enable breeders to obtain a better star rating with associated benefits. Risk rating. Alongside welfare, the breeder's competence of the history is also assessed to determine whether the breeder is either a low risk or high risk operator, e.g. whether it should be expected that the breeder will maintain their standards for the duration of their license period. To obtain a low risk rating, breeders will need to demonstrate that they have been maintaining acceptable standards to a minimum of 3 years. Which is why I think you should get checked every year, regardless. Factors that will consider to include its history meeting this license standards, the nature of the complaints received and how they were dealt with, and the quality of record keeping, which is all very important. And if you're such a great breeder, you will not have any complaints. Right. So, breeders who haven't held a dog breeding license before or haven't been a member of the UKAS accredited scheme, which I'm not sure what that stands for, such as the Kennel Club Assured Breeders, which I have problems with them because they do have a tendency to inbreed their dogs, especially pugs, and their lines aren't always pure, and they breed dogs so they can't breathe, and they have slanty backs so they can't walk, and that's okay because that's fashionable, that's how they're meant to look. They are, however, getting better with their breeding, but they still have a long way to go. So if you haven't had a breeding license and you're not a member of the Kennel Club Assured Breeders for a minimum of 3 years, you will be automatically categorised as a high risk, and you will not be able to gain the highest star rating at first and benefit from the 3-year license duration. So the breeding license required updated in April in 2019. Updated in a second time. 2019, DEFRA issued a note to the local authorities in England stating that any member of the assured breeding scheme of at least 3 years standing should be awarded a 5-star breeding license, which is valid for 3 years. So you can see it's a very long process to get that high star rating. So, any breeders on that scheme that have fewer than 3 years membership to the scheme or have had a license for 3 years should receive a 4-star license, which is only valid for 2 years. The only exception would be where significant evidence of poor animal welfare standards are non-compliant and are found during a local authority inspection. So that's the council coming out and checking up on you. DEFRA also provided further clarification regarding that the £1,000 training income licensing exemption. The £1,000 income exemption has caused considerable confusion for all parties, which may believe that the threshold for which anybody exceeds would require a dog breeding licence. DEFRA has now made it clear that the £1,000 trading income as a reference to the guiding document should be used as an indicator and not a ceiling, as someone with over £1,000 trade income may not be a commercial dog breeder or pet seller, and they may not be making a profit. Regardless of that, I do think that you should at least have a license to breed the animals. Okay, so this law actually is slightly different in Wales. Okay, so under the regulations in Wales, breeders will be required a licence if they keep 3 or more breeding bitches on their premises and breeds on those premises of 3 or more litters of puppies in any 12-month period, advertised for sales for the premises of a puppy or puppies born from the 3 or more litters of puppies for a sale in 12-month period. Right. So, this law was then again updated in March of 2021. So this year that this has been recorded. So the Senate has passed new regulations which we believe will unintentionally introduce a pet vending license threshold for 1 and 2 litter breeders. Are we engaging with the Welsh Government, this is only in Wales, to gain further clarity on the issue? So again, the law is slightly different in Scotland. So currently a breeder in Scotland is defined as anybody in the business of breeding and or who has bred 5 or more litters in a 12-month period, as long as at least one puppy is sold. However, new legislation has passed again in March of this year, of 2021, which reduces the litter threshold from 5 or more litters to 3 or more litters in a 12-month period. A new licensing threshold will come into force on the 1st of September of 2021. And again, it's even different in Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, the breeder must apply for a licence if they have 3 or more breeding bitches on the breeding establishment and meet at least one of the below criteria. They breed 3 or more litters of puppies in any 12-month period. They advertise 3 or more litters of puppies for sale in a 12-month period. They supply 3 or more litters of puppies in any 12-month period, and they advertise a business of puppies, of selling puppies. Okay, and that came into force from April the 1st, 2013. Okay, so that's all I have for this video. So just to summarise, there are laws on breeding animals. Is it good enough? No, it's not. And I'm not just saying that to be a picky cow. I'm saying that because, you know, I am trying to help fight against this horrible breeding of animals, not just dogs and kittens, but of any animal. Okay, because the law for breeding animals only seems to refer to puppies and kittens, so that needs to change so it refers to every single animal that somebody might be breeding, regardless if it's a mammal or if it's a reptile or any type of animal that you may or may not be breeding. And you should have a license to breed any animal, regardless if you're going to sell those puppies on or those kittens or whatever. You should just have a license to be able to breed any animal. And in order to get that license, it shouldn't just be handed to you. You can't just apply for it. There's got to be harder hoops that you have to jump through in order to get that license. E.g., you have to go on a course and you have to get that education and even be doing a refreshers course maybe once every year or 2 years, and then you should have an inspection of your premises at least every year. So this, I'm trying to educate you, so it's very important that you share this video, you comment, you subscribe by clicking on my face down here, and turn on your notifications when you subscribe. If you're on your phone, then you're going to go through settings and allow your YouTube notifications, but you will be then notified for every single video that I post, which every video that I post is just as equally as important as the next one or the last one. For a playlist, which will be just the animal laws, will be here. And from the previous video or the next video, we'll see, will be up here, so go ahead and click on that. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.